You were diagnosed with hepatitis, PBC, and Crohn's disease.
When I talk to the doctors and ask what are the things that I can do, like, well, what do you recommend? There must be something that I can do. They basically said, take your medication, stick to that medical plan that we made, go to your appointments, but continue to lead your life. Eat a healthy diet. But then when I ask, what is a healthy diet? Like, what does that even mean? Oh, like not too much fat, eat healthy foods. But for me, it was always like, I felt like this isn't completely random that this happened to me. No pain, no gain. Like you have to work really hard for everything, You can sleep when you're dead. Like all of these phrases that we grow up with, they stick with you and they make you push so far beyond your boundaries, so far beyond what feels good, that we don't even know where these boundaries are anymore.
What were the first changes that you started to make? Xenia, you were diagnosed with hepatitis, PBC, and Crohn's disease. Could you briefly describe what those are, and then we can rewind the story and learn how you got there?
Yeah, of course. So it's autoimmune hepatitis, so not the viral hepatitis, but all three of these conditions are autoimmune. And what they all have in common, basically, or what autoimmune diseases are, I'm assuming the listeners might know this, but just so we're all on the same page. So they all originate in the immune system. The immune system decided to attack my own tissues. It started with my liver. So what happens basically is that there is inflammation going on in the liver because for some reason that we don't totally understand, my immune system decided to attack this organ. The same thing happened with PBC, which is primary biliary cirrhosis, is an autoimmune condition of the gallbladder. And Crohn's disease is an autoimmune condition of the gut. It could be the whole digestive system, actually. So Crohn's is a bit of a tricky one because for some people, this already originates, I think, in the mouth or much further up the digestive system. For me, it's more gut-based, but it could be really anywhere along the digestive system. And yeah, all of these conditions I mentioned are autoimmune in nature. They have very interesting and diverse symptoms. So I think the first thing that happened for me was just extreme fatigue, very unspecific, feeling super low energy, just feeling generally down and not so great. Digestive issues, of course, all kinds of digestive issues you could think of, different kinds of pains. With the hepatitis, what happened is also jaundice that could happen when bilirubin builds up in your body. So the skin is turning a bit yellowish, the eyes can turn a bit yellowish, the white of the eyes, things like that are a bit more specific. So you could kind of tell from that something is going on in the liver. With the gallbladder, they have really interesting symptoms. For me, I think the worst symptom I had was extreme itchiness. So because the bile acids can build up and be deposited in your skin, and that leads your skin to be extremely itchy. So that is one of the very specific gallbladder issue symptoms. And then, yeah, I mentioned Crohn's, any kind of digestive symptom you can think of. That I
Wow.
would say is, yeah, bit of a basic description.
So you had all three of these going on at the same time. Your liver was affected, your gallbladder, your gut, pretty much everything. And what were you diagnosed with first, or did everything kind of onset at the same time?
It happened about 2 years apart, each of them. So the first one I was diagnosed with was autoimmune hepatitis. 2 years later, PBC, and then another 2 years later, Crohn's disease. So all kinds of things at different times, different points in my life where I thought things can only get better from here, but then it tended to get a little bit worse. But yeah, that's all in the past now. I mean, I still have those conditions, obviously, because they are autoimmune in nature. They can't be cured. They are not going to go away. But by now, I'm not impacted by that in any way. I don't have any of the symptoms anymore that I described before. So I'm feeling completely healthy. I'm feeling like I don't actually have these conditions, while they are still very much still there, but not so active anymore.
Okay, I want to get to how you healed, but before we get there, could you walk us through your journey as far as what doctors did you see? What did you try before you actually found something that worked? What did all of that look like for you?
Yeah, so when I got first diagnosed, I went to the GP first because my most severe issue at the time was that I was just generally feeling miserable, and I couldn't describe it in better terms because I was just a general feeling of misery and everything was kind of doom and gloom. And on top of that, I was experiencing really bad chest pain. And that is something that doctors luckily tend to take very seriously. So my doctor sent me to the hospital, to the ER to get my heart checked out, which was all fine. But what they found is that when they did a blood test, that my liver values were off the chart. So for them, it was quite easy to pinpoint something that's going on with the liver. And the reason why I was having chest pains, it wasn't actually chest pain, but it was pain in my esophagus, because from the liver issues, I was experiencing so much nausea that I was just constantly throwing up, and that was affecting my esophagus. And that is why I was experiencing chest pain. So it was very random. But yeah, then they found out that it's liver related. And then from there on, it was kind of a process where they were trying to exclude what it could be, because it's very difficult sometimes to diagnose these autoimmune conditions. It isn't very black and white. There isn't like the one marker that you can test for and be like, oh yes, this is exactly 100% clear. It is this autoimmune condition. And that's usually not how it is. So what they tend to do is look at all the things that they can rule out, and then whatever remains, it's very likely that it's that. But it's a bit complicated, the whole process. So it took them a while to narrow it down to autoimmune hepatitis. And then what often happens with these conditions that affect the digestive system is that they tend to occur together. So from there on, my chances of having any kind of other autoimmune condition in the digestive system were increased. So when I had additional symptoms, that then led them to assume that I also had PBC. That wasn't a very weird thing for them. It was kind of like, oh, we saw that coming. And the same thing happened with Crohn's disease again, which for me was frustrating because I didn't know about this. They hadn't told me at the time, but apparently it wasn't a big surprise that these things kept happening to me.
And what solutions did they offer you?
And not many, to be honest. So my whole family is in medicine. So my parents are in medicine, my uncles, my sisters, everyone is very involved in medicine, being a doctor, being a nurse, studying medicine, and so on. So I feel like I had a lot of background already on many different conditions. And I kind of understood, what it means to have an autoimmune disease. I understood that there's no cure for this. And I understood the medication that came with it. But for me, it was always like, I felt like this isn't completely random that this happened to me. It made sense for me at the time, looking at my lifestyle, that there's certain things that I did that have probably contributed to my health declining. That wasn't a complete surprise for me. It was pretty obvious to me. So I was thinking, if I can learn from that and change different ways of how I'm leading my life, make different decisions, it would make sense for me to be able to improve my symptoms. When I talk to the doctors and ask what are the things that I can do, like, well, what do you recommend? There must be something that I can do. They basically said, take your medication, stick to that medical plan that we made, go to your appointments, but continue to lead your life. And that was just so frustrating. And so, like, for me, just I couldn't understand that at all, because from the top of my head, without doing much research, I could already think of like 10 different things. But it wasn't, I mean, I was just very surprised from that whole experience. And I was asking about food specifically, like, what is the nutrition wise that I can do? What am I supposed to think of? Yeah, like eat a healthy diet. But then when I ask, what is a healthy diet? Like, what does that even mean? Oh, like not too much fat, eat healthy foods, whatever. Like they didn't know. Like they say healthy diet, but they can't even define it. That was in the UK, so I was living in the UK at the time, and my doctors were great. Like I'm not like I'm very glad that I had them, but it just the medical system isn't designed in a way to give you things that you can do proactively above and beyond taking a medication. It's just not planned for that. And I also think most people are not really interested in that. So they were very reluctant to tell me about these things because they told me most people are not interested. Most people, when they say you can do this and this, they don't want to hear this. They want the easy solution of taking a pill. So I think they've also stopped trying, even if there are some things that they can think of. So it can't hurt to ask what they recommend, but there isn't a lot that was recommended to me at the time.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience when I was facing health issues and I saw several doctors. I was beside myself that none of them asked about my diet.
Yeah.
So you had to ask your doctor, like, does diet matter or what should I be eating?
Yeah, I asked all the questions. I asked, what am I supposed to be eating? What am I supposed to not be eating? Is there any specific exercises I'm supposed to be doing? Is there anything I'm supposed to avoid? Like, how many hours of sleep do you recommend? Like, all things. And there was just nothing coming back at all. It was just lead your life, like, don't worry about these things. Take your medication. That was basically the message that I got.
So ultimately, you kind of had a feeling or some type of sense that that wasn't the route to take.
It just didn't make sense for me because for me it was so obvious that not that I brought this on myself, that's not how I would phrase it, but there were things in my life that I know I was doing that weren't healthy, and most of that was for me stress related because I was in a working environment I wasn't enjoying. I was working really long hours. I was constantly stressed out. I couldn't sleep. Like all of these things were draining me. So I knew this at the time, but I mean, what are you supposed to do? Like this is how our work life looks for many people, right? It's like there's not many things that you can do about this, but it's still something I was very aware of that this wasn't good for me. I wasn't making time to eat proper food. I was usually eating at my desk. I grabbed like a snack somewhere at a restaurant around the office where I was living. I wasn't home cooking much because I simply didn't have time for that. I didn't think about what kind of nutrients does my body need, and is it getting these nutrients from the food that I'm eating. Everything I was doing, I was kind of overdoing it in a way that wasn't helpful to my body anymore. I was exercising, but I was exercising to a point where every time when I got home afterwards, I was feeling so exhausted. My body was like feeling like I was dying. And I was thinking, oh, that means I'm gonna like get some muscle mass or whatever. Like this can only be good because we're trained, we have these like ingrained beliefs, no pain, no gain. Like you have to work really hard for everything, you can sleep when you're dead. Like all of these phrases that we grow up with, they stick with you and they make you push so far beyond your boundaries, so far beyond what feels good, that we don't even know where these boundaries are anymore. So I didn't have them for my body. I didn't know at the time what it was that my body was telling me because I just stopped listening, and I didn't know how to listen for these things. So I had to relearn all of this. And as I was going through it, it just made so much more sense day by day of all the ways I had mistreated my body unknowingly. It wasn't my fault. Like it's usually not our fault because we simply don't know any better. But it's, I mean, to tell me that I'm just supposed to continue leading my life the way I'm leading it without even asking, like, what are you doing? What kind of food are you eating? Are you moving? Are you moving in a way that's supportive for your body? Like all of these things, these questions didn't even occur at all in any of my appointments.
So you were pushing yourself, it sounds like, burning the candle at both ends and not giving your body the fuel that it actually needed.
Yes.
And then you were forced to slow down and reevaluate.
Exactly. At that point, it was just screaming in my face, like, I did this all wrong. I have to do better. And for me, it made sense that if I can fix this, if I can live in a way that is more supportive for my body, give it all the resources that it needs to also heal and rebuild, then I would also feel better. Like that was just a no-brainer for me.
What were the first changes that you started to make?
So I Googled a lot. I bought all the books. I was reading everything. So I was, first of all, doing an insane amount of research, which in hindsight, like that is where I would always start, do your research. But at the same time, that turned into a very unhealthy habit because I got really obsessed with all the things, lifestyle related things that you can do. And there's just too much out there, too much information sometimes. And it was so overwhelming. And I was really going through a phase where I was just overwhelmed. It was just all too much. You don't know where to start. You don't know where to end. Like every single thing that you're doing, you're constantly asking yourself, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Am I supposed to be doing this? What could I do better? Like it just becomes, for me, it became obsessive. It really turned into a not so healthy habit. But I couldn't see that at the time because it felt like at least I was doing something. At least I wasn't just leaning back and letting this happen to me. So at the time, I thought that was all good and going the way it was supposed to be going, even though I was feeling miserable while I was going through it. The first thing I started to really change was diet, simply because that was the one that I think was just thrown around the most. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Oh, change your diet. Eat this, eat this, eat this, follow this diet, follow that diet, don't eat these foods. Like, it's just everywhere. So especially for people with autoimmune diseases, I think diet is usually the first thing that comes up where you can change the most. But then the question, of course, is what kind of diet works best? So again, I had like all these different books. Oh, eat vegan, eat vegetarian, eat a Mediterranean diet, eat this keto approach, eat like this. Okay. All right, I have to start somewhere. I have to try something. So first I ate vegetarian for a couple of months. Then I switched to vegan for a couple of months. Then that kind of really backfired. I was feeling worse and worse during the whole time. So I switched more towards a Mediterranean diet. I switched more towards a whole foods diet. I tried all kinds of different things. And for me, because I was already down this obsessive rabbit hole so much, I was also extremely obsessive with diet and having extremely strict rules around diet. Like there was nothing enjoyable about eating food anymore at this point. And one thing that for me came on top was that I had already struggled for most of my life with different degrees of disordered eating. So I was never a big eater. I was never someone to just, indulge in food too much. I was always very controlled and restrictive about this. So engaging in these specific diets that are very restrictive was very triggering for me. And that was not a healthy time in my life. And it took me a long time to see that and work through that and be able to switch gears a bit, because it is just, it's not the best place to start. I would definitely not do this the same way again. I think diet is one of the last things I would recommend anyone to do, just because it's such a big thing to take on. And from the point where I was at the time when I started with diet, I simply had no resources to deal with this. I had no energy left. I had no motivation. I had nothing left to give. And this diet thing was just taking and taking from me any last bit that I had left. And that was really hard. So what I learned from that is, now that I'm working with my own clients, we pause diet until they are in a better place. Because if you start working with your mindset a little bit, if you start building some resources, some resilience, then you can deal with these things. But if you have nothing left, and that is often when people turn to diet, right? As like the last resort, nothing else has worked. I'm at rock bottom. I'm feeling the worst I've ever felt. Now I do diet. Now I change my whole way of eating. It's exhausting. It's a really big task to take on.
What diet did you land on? What are you eating now?
So what worked for me was the AIP, which is the autoimmune protocol, because again, that is something for me I was struggling with a lot, finding the right diet that works for me. And I couldn't understand why there are so many different diets out there and so many people advocating for all kinds of different diets. So clearly all of them work for some people, how do I find the one that works for me? And that was something that was just a huge black box, and I couldn't figure it out. And then what I found is the AIP, which is an elimination diet, or any elimination diet in general, that is something that makes a lot of sense for me, because it's not a one size fits all. It's a diet where you are able to find out what your individual food triggers are, and then you can design your own diet around that. And at the same time, it's not meant to be restrictive, because yes, you're taking away certain foods that are highly triggering for many people, can be highly inflammatory, can cause sensitivities. You're taking those away. But at the same time, it's all about adding in nutritious food sources. So you're not supposed to restrict any food groups, or actually you are restricting some food groups like legumes, pulses, grains, and things like that, but you're not supposed to restrict any nutrients. You're not supposed to restrict any macronutrients. Like, you're supposed to eat protein, fats, carbs. You're supposed to eat all the different vitamins that are there, all the different minerals that are there, and eat as much as you can of those. Because we, as people with autoimmune diseases, we have such a huge need for all of these nutrients, because our body's going through so much. It needs all this fuel. So that was a diet that made a lot of sense for me. And I think being able to also understand why it works and why it's designed the way that it is designed, that really helped me, because otherwise it's just like someone tells you what to do and you do it, but you don't fully understand. Like, that never really worked for me so well. So I went all in on that. I got certified as an AIP coach myself. At the time, I didn't plan to coach. I just wanted to really fully understand what I was doing. But yeah, that is now what I'm also doing with my clients, because it's really one diet approach that I can say 100% works for people. It is doable. It is very much achievable. It is something that you can just design the way that it works for you. You reintroduce foods after a certain period of time when you feel better, and you come out at a diet that gives you all the possible flexibility while still staying within the boundaries that your body sets for yourself. Because all our bodies have different kinds of food triggers. As soon as we know what they are and we can avoid them, they are just going to feel so much better. And that is something where people can see tremendous results after only a couple of weeks, after a month or two. It can work really fast.
I came to a similar, if not the same conclusion when it comes to diet after pretty much living everything you just spoke, as far as the research and experimenting with all the different diets, all the different books and the websites, just anything I could consume. Yeah, it became a bit overwhelming. And the conclusion I came to was that we are all bio-individual. There's not a one size fits all diet. And in fact, there's not even a diet for every person. There's a diet for every person at a different phase. So what we're eating today, our bodies might need something else tomorrow or in a month or in a year. And we have to really be in tune with them and pay attention to that, and not be so rigid and strict with, well, this is the diet that's supposed to work, and this has been working the whole time, so this is what I'm going to stick to. No, I think it changes. And yeah, nutrients are a big key component, like you're saying. As long as, our bodies need that support. So the nutrients in every form, carbs, fat, protein, sugar, from fruit or what have you. But yeah, we had similar experience there. So if you don't start with diet with your clients, where do you start?
I always start with mindset, because usually when people approach me, they want to start with diet, because they know I'm an AIP certified coach, and diet is probably the biggest or most popular aspect of the AIP protocol. So that's when people usually approach me, and then I'm saying, okay, let's take a step back. Like, why is diet so important to you? What is it that you're trying to achieve? If diet worked for you, what would your life be different? How would your life be different? How would this really help you? And from there, we kind of get to what it is that they really want, because they don't want to change their diet. What they want is to feel better. But what is better? Like, what does a life look like where you're not held back by your health condition? And that is something that looks very different for everyone. There's like many different aspects of this vision that they have for themselves, for how their life could look like if it wasn't impacted by a chronic condition, many of those aspects are already achievable without turning to diet. Because often what people want is they want to stress less about all these things. Usually they are so at odds with themselves. There's so much frustration. There's so much anger, resentment. We have body image issues. There's so much mind baggage that people come with that is really difficult to work through, but crucial to work through before you are jumping into big lifestyle changes. Because like I mentioned before, you have to build these resources to be able to deal with a big change, like changing your whole diet, changing your whole way of eating. It's a huge task. And it can be very, very unenjoyable, like it was for me at the time when I was changing my diet. So it's not the place where I want to start. And instead, what I usually start is working with them through these mindset things, looking at how are they able to support themselves through something like a diet change? What kind of resources do they already bring? What is their tone of voice when they speak to themselves, when they look at themselves in the mirror? What kind of voice is that? Because if your voice is a mean little gremlin that says you can't do anything right, you've already lost, like I'm disappointed in you, I hate you, I hate what's going on here, I hate what is happening, I hate this life, everything is miserable. This is not a voice that is going to carry you through a lifestyle change or through any change for that matter. It's just going to make it 100 times harder. So if we're able to turn this into someone who says, you're doing great, you can do this, I believe in you, I love myself enough to want this for me, to want good things for me, that's a completely different place to start from. And that is a voice that is able to carry you through a diet change, because there is going to be days where it feels really tough. And if your voice can say, that's okay, take this day for yourself, tomorrow will be better, because you're optimistic and you have this capacity built for empathy towards yourself, to be supportive with yourself, that is what's going to help you through that. If we don't have that, I'm not going to go change their diet. Also looking at stress, like what are the different stressors in their life? How are they dealing with those? What is there going on above and beyond physical symptoms? Because we often have so many, like I mentioned before, when I was looking at my life, my work circumstances were so terrible, they didn't support me in healing. Like I could have had the best diet out there for myself if I wasn't looking at where does all of this insane stress come from? How can I deal with this? How can I make little changes to experience less stress on a daily basis? That is something that can go so much further even that diet. That is probably one of the most powerful tools we have to look at where does the stress come from? Is it possible to avoid some of that stress? If it's not possible, how can we deal with this in a healthy way? Do you have any healthy coping mechanism? Where do you put the stress? Do you eat it up? Do you bottle it up? Do you suppress it? Are you able to express it in a healthy way? What is a healthy way of expressing stress? So those are usually things that I look at before. And then once they are in a better place, because usually those are things that have a big impact really fast. People tend to feel much better after a couple of weeks just working through this stuff, because they are able to deal with all of these emotions, all of this emotional baggage, this mental baggage so much better. Then we can look at diet. And then they are at a place where they're also excited to do this and not, oh, I don't really want to do this, but I know that I should. But they say, oh, this is a chance for me. Like, I'm excited to do this. I understand how this diet also works, like educating someone why it is that we're doing this, what the process looks like, that this is not supposed to be a lifelong sentence. They now have to eat this restricted diet, but it's a short time where we're doing the elimination diet. Then we're introducing all the foods again. We will be able to find out exactly what it is they tolerate, what it is they don't tolerate. They can then design their own diet and be confident in this and comfortable with it. It's something that can make them feel excited and motivated. And that I found really important, because if you're not excited about doing this, the whole trip is going to be horrible. The whole trip is not going to be enjoyable at all. It's going to be so much harder than if you're able to look at this with a positive attitude. And then after I work with them through diet, we also look at, like sleep and rest. Where is it that they get energy from? What kind of things can they do to improve their energy resources? And also what can I do in terms of movement? Like how are they supposed to move their bodies? What feels good for them? What is it that they want to do? Just with the diet, it's not something that I want to push them to do, but create this excitement for them so they are actually looking forward to moving and to doing things that are good for their bodies, because we've invested all this time into their mindset earlier that their supportive voice says, you can do this. I want to support you with this. I want to make things easier for you. And it's not so fear-based anymore. It's not so like, oh, if this is not working, then I'm going to get worse and I'm scared and I actually don't really want to do this, but this is the last thing that I can do. But instead they're saying, you know, I love myself so much that I want this for myself. This is going to improve my life, and I want a good life, and I want all these things for me. So I'm excited about doing this. I'm excited about going at these lengths and doing all this extra work to feel better and to feel the best that I possibly can.
Do you have that gremlin voice? Because I know I do still, and I'm curious, how do you handle it?
I had a terrible gremlin for I think most of my life. And I do have to say, and I'm very surprised sometimes about that, because that voice got so small over the years. And now when I hear it, I'm very much able to differentiate, okay, this is not actually me talking here. This is the gremlin that's still there, that's still groveling, but I'm able to not push it aside, but be like, okay, you're there, I hear you, but I choose to think about this differently. And some days this is easier, some days this is harder. I think especially when you're having a couple of bad days, this voice again can become louder and louder. I don't think you can ever fully get rid of it. But now I know what I can do to take away the power that this voice has. Because the more you give into it and the more you engage with it, the louder it becomes, and the more you're nourishing it and nourishing and growing this gremlin again. So the less power you're shifting towards it, or the more effort you make to shift away from that. And I think also give yourself the space to put conscious thoughts on top of this, to say, okay, like I said, I hear this, but this is not actually what I believe. Here is what I know about my journey. Here is the truth that I have learned about myself. I don't have to take this voice as the voice of truth, because that is not what it is. And to be able to make this distinction, I think is already the biggest part of overcoming that gremlin voice.
What is the truth saying? The voice of
I think
truth.
the voice of truth would be, you know, when you understand all the effort that you are putting into getting better, all of the conscious effort that you are making to improve your life, to improve your health, to heal your body, that is something that nobody's going to be able to take away from you. And the gremlin is always going to say it's not enough, like you didn't do this right, you did all of these mistakes. But I think the more conscious attention we shift into all of the things that we're doing already and that we're doing well and good, and that can be difficult sometimes, because I think we all have this tendency to think when we're never doing enough, we could always do better. Like that's just a human flaw that we have. But remembering and reminding yourself of how far you've come and how many times you said yes to improving things for yourself where you could have said no. Every difficult moment in your life that didn't crush your spirits, but somehow made you stronger. And that's something you have to also work for, to be able to really benefit from this point of view, because it's not just going to be there for you to reference. You have to work for this first. You have to establish these moments first. So that's usually also what I do with my clients in this mindset module, to really look at their lives, the turning points that they had in their life, the moments that made them stronger, so they can kind of go back and reference all of these moments and understand, oh, I already came so far. Like, I'm not starting from zero. Like, usually by the time that they start working with me, there's already so many things that they tried, so many times where they did not give up, you know, so many turning points that already made them stronger, that gave them all these resources to deal with other challenges better than they used to deal with them before. So everyone already has this, but we tend to forget if we don't consciously shift our focus to it and remember how far we already came.
Mhm. Do you believe everything happens for a reason? I ask because I imagine after having several autoimmune conditions and being able to heal from that, you must feel incredibly empowered.
Yeah, so it is something I struggled with for the longest time because I hate to think that I had to get sick to learn a lesson. Like I don't wish that on anyone, and I obviously wish it would have been different. Um, and I also don't think that I did anything to deserve this happening to me. But at the same time, I can't say that it has not improved my life. It is something that I learned from, that I grew from, that made me a better person, that turned my life into a direction I never would have expected it to go. I'm very, very grateful for the journey that opened to me because I got sick in the first place. And that is something I think it takes a long time to see that. If you are in the thick of it, dealing with all your symptoms, there's no way you're going to say, oh, I'm grateful for this happening to me. So that's, I think it's a very privileged point of view that I have now because I was able to turn this into something that made me stronger and not tore me down. I'm very aware of that. And I'm also very aware that it can be very triggering for people. It used to be very triggering for me while I was feeling horrible when people were saying, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Like that is not something you want to hear when you're really miserable, suffering from your condition. But at the same time, what it did for me and why I'm saying this now, this is actually the best thing that happened for me because it gave me this chance to really reevaluate how my life was going up until the moment that I did get sick. And I think discovering how many mistakes I made in my own life that at the time I thought decisions I was taking for the right reasons, I was going in the right direction, but it wasn't something that helped me grow as a person, become a stronger person, become the person that I was supposed to be. I was going into a direction that I thought I was supposed to be going because of, I don't know, beliefs that I held about myself, beliefs that I held about what is success, what is a successful life, what are you supposed to achieve during your lifetime, all of these things that I hadn't predefined for myself. But I took those beliefs from peers, I don't know, friends, school, university, employers. What tends to happen is that we just take other people's definitions of what a successful life looks like and take this for ourselves. And I never stopped to question if that is actually what I believe to be true. But when I was forced to do that, because now I was looking at life with my autoimmune condition, that kind of messed everything up for myself. The whole way that I came up until there was suddenly destroyed. I couldn't see myself continuing with my career the way the way I had been going so far. I didn't see a path for myself anymore. I definitely didn't see the path that I thought I was going to have anymore. And I was really struggling to see the point in everything and turn this around into a life that I can still define as successful for myself. So I had to kind of go back to the beginning, go back to start from zero again and define for me, what do I want out of life? What are the things that are important to me in life? Am I working towards them at all? And it turned out I didn't. I was thinking the completely opposite things are important to the ones that were actually important to me. But I had never made the time to think about this. And that is this opportunity that being faced with a chronic health condition gives you, being faced with any kind of dramatic life challenge really gives you, and why this can be so beneficial to a person's life, because it lets you question all these things. And it lets you be really honest with yourself and learn from this challenge to make you stronger, make you more resilient, and also be able to walk this path that you were meant to be walking. Because if our lives are super easy all the time, everything is going according to plan, we never actually stop and make the time to question, is the plan actually the plan that I want for myself? Where does this plan come from? And that is what working through something like overcoming an autoimmune condition can do for you. Yeah, so that is exactly now what I'm doing with my clients. So the approach that I'm following with them, starting with mindset, working on these internal resources first, making sure you are in a very strong and optimistic and positive position before you're tackling diet, before you're tackling exercise, before you're tackling like your sleep and all of these lifestyle factors. And then as a last step, I work with them through this self-discovery that I had just talked about, because that was a big piece for me to find out, who am I beyond this condition? Because I'm no longer the person I used to be before. I'm no longer the person who thought, all of these things in life are different, are important, like having this crazy job, making a lot of money, climbing the career ladder, sacrificing my friendships, sacrificing my relationships for having a fulfilled career. That wasn't important for me anymore, but I didn't know who this person was underneath all of this, because now I was a patient, like I was all of this disease, but that wasn't my identity either. But it's so hard to find out who you are beyond all of these things, and that's something really difficult, because if you're at this point where, okay, you have a healthy mindset now, you can approach these lifestyle changes, you have changed your life, but then still there's so many questions about, who am I? Why am I even doing this? Like, what am I doing this for? What do I want my life to be like? And if we don't get to those, what is going to stop you to get back into your old life, to jump back into the old routines? And this point is going to come. Like, if you don't have this strong foundation where you can be really reassured, you understand who you are, you understand what's important for your life, you are able to lead your life in alignment with these values, with this purpose that you define for yourself, nothing is going to stop you from just turning back and starting all over the same way that you did before. But if you learn from that, if you understand how that changed you as a person, if you understand the person that you are and what that person wants out of life, then you can change everything. And it's going to feel so much easier, because it feels like you're finally doing what you were supposed to be doing all along anyway. You are finally living in full alignment with who you truly are. And if I had known this before, I wouldn't have ended up in the position that I was, but I didn't know this about myself. But then, because I found out about this during that whole journey, then I was able to change my life in a sustainable way and make sure this is never again going to happen to me, because now I know what's good for me. I know how to treat my body well. I know, like, whenever I make a decision that doesn't feel right for me, this is going to hurt me. This is going to come back at me. So I have to make sure I make decisions the right way. But to do that, I need to make sure I understand how to make the right decision. What values am I basing this on? Like, how, like, what's the right path and what's the wrong path? First, we have to define this. We have to somehow define this compass inside of us that always tells us where the right way is. And that is the last thing that I work through with my clients, so they can then also go and really apply this to their life in a sustainable way, because they understand why they're doing this whole thing.
Beautifully said. I have one final question I ask at the end, but before I do, where can people find more from you?
I have a website. It's xeniabrandstetter.com. I'm sure we can drop it in the notes because it's a complicated name. But yeah, go on the website. There will be a booking link to book a free coaching call with me. So if you have any questions about this episode, about anything that I said, I'm very, very happy to make sure it's relevant for you. So like, we all have our own baggage, we all have our own situations. And I find it super helpful to just talk with people about the situation that they are currently in and find out where they are stuck. We can find out, what your next steps could be. It's something to keep you moving, because the worst thing I always feel is that when people are all alone at home, they don't know where to go next. They are so disappointed, so fed up, so frustrated, and they don't see a path to move forward to. And that's the only thing that I really, that's what I'm passionate about. So if there's anything I can do to push you to move forward again, to inspire you to move forward because you know what's next, that is all that I want to do. And there's no strings attached. This is not a sales call. You can decide to continue working with me or not. That is not the important part. The important part is just that you understand what's next for you, and yeah, book that call.
What is your number one health tip? whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
I think the tiniest thing that I did that had the biggest impact for me was to every day make time to think about what did I do today or what will I do today that is good for me. And not good for me in a sense of, oh, I'm supposed to eat this healthy food, but something that really nourishes my soul, something that gives me joy, that turns any day into a good day because I did one thing that I really wanted to do that I was passionate about. If that is drinking a green smoothie, whatever, that could be that. But it could also be like I'm super passionate about pottery or painting. So sometimes that is all that I need to make a day a good day. And I haven't paid attention to eating the best foods, but at the same time, I still did something that nourished my soul. And that is, I think, so important and something we really, really forget, especially when working through a health condition. We think everything has to be super hard. We have to work so hard for this. We have to deserve this. We can't have any fun anymore. Anything we do has to be purposeful and designed to improve our health. But if we do that, we just forget to nourish our soul. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a fight and everything is going to be so hard. But yeah, if we simply do one little thing for our soul every day, you'll be in such a better place to take on anything else.
I love that. Xenia, thank you so much for this. Your story is truly an inspiration, and I believe that you are what a lot of people would call a light worker. I think that you had to go through this in order to be the person you are to help others who are on a similar path. And just, I thank you for, dedicating your life to this. And I really enjoyed our conversation today and getting to hear your story firsthand. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And I love that term. I've never heard that term before, but yeah, I can definitely identify. And yeah, it just makes me so happy to be able to pass on this light to someone else and help them through this because it doesn't have to be that hard of a journey. It can be so much fun and it can be really enjoyable. And that is my biggest message.
Yes, yes, I agree. And make sure you check out the description to find more from Xenia, and also subscribe to see more videos with amazing guests like Xenia. And I will talk to you soon.